You are listening to the Real Estate BlindBid Provocateurs, a podcast taking a bold stand against the opaque and frustrating process of blind bids in residential real estate. Blind bids have long plagued real estate with uncertainty, mistrust, and manipulation with the truth. This podcast is a production of True Home Value, the pioneers of transparent open bidding, where every detail of every offer is available to every buyer. Let's get into it. Hey, and welcome back to the BlindBid Provocateurs. I'm your host, James Clark, back again with my co-host, Cayenne Brownell. Cayenne, how you doing?
Doing great, James. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm really excited about this episode. You have written another article that I really think this is the bender. The article is titled "The Real Estate Industry's Blind Bid Problem, Ignoring the Elephant for the Mouse." Explain what this article is about and why you wrote it and why now is the right time to begin this discussion. So what's it about? Why you wrote it? Why is this the right time?
So what it's about, and let me just say, I'm excited to talk about this now. It's just burning in my brain because I'm seeing all of these articles and all these conversations about agent commissions, and this industry is changing, and these agents are making too much, and blah, blah, all this stuff. And I just can't help but back to this notion that we're ignoring the elephant because we're all worried here about the agent commissions, which, yes, they're expensive and they're certainly a part of it. But I personally believe that the real underlying issue in real estate is this blind bid system that we're all using that is just causing anxiety and manipulation and deceit. And so it's, hey, shiny thing, look over here. Agents are bad, agent commissions. Meantime, we're going to keep pushing this whole blind bid process.
Yeah, and just so for reference, the mouse is this small problem that's causing everybody to jump up and scream, and it's attracting all the attention, where the big problem is, quote unquote, the elephant in the room. I know we've done a podcast on the NAR settlement, and this is just sucking all the oxygen out of the room at this point in time. And what you're saying is refocus on the bigger issues.
To recap, the lawsuit basically said that the agents and the brokers were colluding to raise agent commissions, and that it was all being done. The reason it was playing out was via the seller to pay buyer's agent commissions, and theoretically not being told that they were negotiable or that they didn't have to pay them and all of this and that. So that was the verdict that came out in October 31st of 2023, came out and said, that's happening and it's bad, basically. It's accelerating the change in the industry, no doubt. But I think what really threw everyone for a loop is when the National Association of Realtors came out in March, I think it was, March or April, and agreed to that, where they're like, it wasn't us. It certainly wasn't us. And so we're going to get all of our hands out of this and point all these fingers at the agents. And here's how this is going to be fixed. Going forward, agents are not going to be able to offer what's called a co-op commission, meaning a selling agent cannot offer a buyer's agent a commission and advertise that. It can still be paid and it can be negotiated as part of the deal, but advertised in the MLS or anywhere else. So that's a huge change. The other really massive is that part of this settlement says that an agent cannot show a buyer a house, any house, without first having the compensation conversation with them and memorializing that some type of written agreement, whether it's a contract like an agency agreement, it can be a customer, even per of the relationships. But that's a huge shift in the industry because all of a sudden buyers that are excited about looking at houses are going to be tied in to an agent. They're going to have this conversation with the agent before they go look at this house with them. And I think it's going to be a challenging conversation for agents to have, realistically.
buyer's agent representation model, right? It's what you're saying. I mean, we as the consumers are so used to, I see the house on Zillow, I'm doing all the research myself, I can understand neighborhoods. It's like now I have to actually go under contract with a buyer's agents before I get to do anything. It really creates that tension up front in terms of getting even the process going.
For sure. And I think it doesn't have to be a long-term contract is my understanding of it. It can be for house only. But the point is this, is you can't get a lead from Zillow or Realtor.com anymore as a realtor and just show up to somebody that you've never met and show them the house. Before we can ever walk in that door, you got to have this conversation and memorialize it. That's the key. I think if it's not memorialized, then the agents are going to be huge, having license censure and this and that. That's really going to be shifting the industry, and that goes into effect August 17th. Some of the states are accelerating it, but nationwide, it technically goes into effect 17th. That's when you're going to really see that. But again, okay, so now you've had this, we've complicated that and made it a little more challenging. So you love this house, James, and you've got this agreement with me. Now what? Oh, same old 6 and 7. Let's go through this ridiculous blind bid process, get all worked up over this and get manipulated and all that, just like always. So what have we really?
Yeah, nothing's actually really changed.
Right.
And so like the process itself, as we like to talk about, it's a flaw of the system. It's a feature of the system, not a bug in terms of the blind bid. And then you had brought out 3 points in your article around these flaws, and it's lack of information, manipulative practices, and buyer frustration. And all of this that you're talking about, none of this gets solved with the NAR lawsuit. None of it gets solved with agent commissions. This is still the same system that we've all been placed into.
Absolutely. And let me just be the devil's advocate for a minute and say, okay, if it gets a lot more complicated and more challenging for agents, buyer's agents to get paid, are they going to be more desperate? Is there going to be more of these games being played? Because it's just going to be a lot. And the other thing is, it's not just buyer's frustration, it's buyer's remorse. And I think that's a really important key for us here, is that it's the fatigue and the remorse that I see in these buyers after they go through this blind bid process and just get battered. At the end, they win. Are they happy that they won? Or are they going, wait, did I pay too much? Did I get manipulated?
So right now the conversation is, the real estate industry is in turmoil. Agents don't know how they're going to earn money anymore. Potentially, a lot of agents are going to leave the industry. That could be one. But still, it just doesn't matter because you're still within the blind bid manipulative system. And you mentioned the solution being an open bid platform, which is what we at True Home Value are doing. So maybe talk about that, the benefits, healthy competition, fairness, trust in the system.
Absolutely. I think when people have more information, they're more likely to make a better decision, right? They're less likely to get pressure, a payment they can't afford, or cash that they can't come up with, or this or that. So having all of that information, being able to see where they stand in this bidding process, and then making the decision, that's what we do with everything that we buy, a carton of milk to a new car. So why wouldn't we do it that way for housing? It just makes no sense.
It makes no sense. So the way forward really, as you mentioned, is advocating for transparency. And that includes an industry-wide adoption of new standards of an open bid platform to ensure transparent and fair market value. And this is one of those few moments where the change really isn't going to come from the inside. And the agents themselves, at least the successful ones, have gotten here because they know how to work the system really well. And we've had many conversations with agents who try to explain why an open bid situation won't work. And typically it's because they're trying to hide something from the buyer. And so this demand from change needs to come from both the sellers and the buyers. And there are going to be a few agents out there like yourself who are willing to step into the fray and say, there is a better way.
Right.
So why don't you talk about like that role of the real estate professional just moving forward?
Well, I think that what you hit on is a really good point. And I don't know, I mean, I might disagree with you a little bit that they're trying something as much as, let's call them the incumbents, for lack of a better name, right? They're the incumbents in this industry right now. And they're only able to look at this with a lens of the past. This is how it's been done. And this particular buyer, he wouldn't have gotten as high. He had this unique extenuating circumstance, this and that. That's all the time when we talk about this. I get it. I've had to go through this whole thinking about this. But what I'm advocating for and challenging people to do is think in the future. What is this going to look like in 5 years? Look like it does now. I don't believe. I think that what's happening with this commission lawsuit and all of this is that the whole notion of transparency is catamount to this, right? It's just in there, but it's on the fringe of the issue. It's the mouse. It's the little mouse scurrying about the big elephant, which is the whole system is just flawed. Process works is just screwed up. I think going forward, it's going to require agents to be in the future, living in the future, not worrying about how I did it on that deal and all.
Yeah, good point. Because the few conversations we've had, people will talk about, here's why that process wouldn't work in an open bid system. That's because you're trying to feed that process into a closed bid system. These are two totally different things. To your point, you have to be in the future and think about what are the opportunities and how is this going to play out in the future? What are we really looking at with technology advancements and AI and virtual home tours via Apple Vision? This whole thing is just set up for big change. And I love how you're living in the future and really looking for the opportunity to make a big change here.
Absolutely. I think it's the way that we have to go. We've used this analogy many times, just the music industry, and how it took a 20-year cycle for them to really change and disrupt completely the music industry. And I feel like the real estate industry is undergoing the same change. And we're probably, 12, 15 years into our 20-year cycle. But it's coming and it's upon us. And yes, this commission piece is an important piece, but it's not good.
It's an inflection point which is going to drive future change.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Cayenne, thanks for jumping in here, writing the article, and being that person willing to carry this forward.
You bet.
All right. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Real Estate Blind Bid Provocateurs. If you learned something today and are ready to bring trust, transparency, and fixed cost to residential real estate, then don't be shy about it. Tell your friends, colleagues, and family. Perhaps with someone who was thinking about buying or selling a home. Do them a favor and hit that share button and text a link to this episode. They'll be sure to thank you. If you prefer to watch your podcast as videos, guess what? We're on YouTube. Find us by searching for True Home Value. And thank you so much for listening. And that is about as much as we can incite in a day. Have a good one.